Welcome to Your Broker Room. I'm your host, Sarah Wells.
Okay, here we go.
So Frank, you don't really need an introduction, but there are going to be some people out there that haven't been around as long as me. So in a nutshell, can you tell me who you are and why you are so passionate about broking?
Who I am? I'm Frank Ganis. And one of the embarrassing things I find in my life is people keep on saying, "Oh, you're Frank." No, I'm a normal human being who's probably spent 35 to 40 years in this industry. And when I commenced and started in this industry, there was no industry. There was no mortgage brokers. There was no non-bank lenders. There was no, medium-sized lenders. And I was lucky enough to work at Macquarie Bank for 30 odd years. I was lucky enough that Alan Moss, who was the managing director at the time, said to me, "Here's a wad of money, go and build me a business." And we were lucky enough to be able to sell and convince people from here that there was an alternative way for Australians particularly to realise their dream, i.e. a home loan, to buy their homes.
So we can really thank people like you for us being here today, because you had a belief and got that wad of cash that Australians needed to have advocates to help them navigate buying homes and making real financial decisions around debt.
I'd like to think I played a small role in that. But I think it was personal, because I remember when I got my first home loan, this is a true story, and it's amazing how a personal story actually drives what happens after that. I would have been in my early 20s. We were buying our first property at Cogra in New South Wales, in Sydney, New South Wales. And one would think that if you're putting a $20,000 deposit on a $60,000 property, in other words, a two-third lend, not a problem, right? But I had to wear a suit, a tie, meet my bank manager, beg for money. And that scarred me. It really left an impression on me insofar as there's got to be a better way to do this. I just started with Macquarie, and it was like, guys, this is what they do in the US. Should we have a crack at this? And Macquarie, being Macquarie, says, yeah, let's do this. And look, honestly, the rest is history. The second break I got in my life was I had a very dear friend called, two dear friends. One was called John Simon, and we set up Aussie Home Loans. And my other dear friend, who just happens to be the chairman of this organisation, was Mike Burris, who I've known for over 40 years, was setting up Wizard at the time. I was lucky enough to be able to do business with both of them.
So whilst you haven't been a broker, you certainly do have broking DNA in your veins, and probably one of the architects of what we see today. But what I hear is it comes from those personal journeys and personal stories about why we're here. So let me ask you this. What is the one thing that you wish every broker truly knew about the value that they have to the people that they serve each and every day? Mr.
and Mrs. Joe Average, the borrower, the consumer, trust them.
They trust us more than they hate banks.
It's all about trust. Well, it's not even about hating banks, it's about trust. Let me tell you, I was reading an article the other day. It was written by a guy that set up a business in 2018. And I think he called it power broking, power something or other. And he's taken 10,000 applications since 2018. About a month ago, he actually released a set of results for 1,000 of those 10,000 people. In other words, 10% of what he had applications he had taken. And let me tell you this, well, the great facts for this industry, which is why I said to you as we're walking in, we completely underestimate the value and the important significance of this organisation. Now, I'm very, very biased because, yes, Sarah, I've had a lot to do with where the industry is, but here is the facts that people have got to grab. 90% of people that basically were offered the opportunity to digitally lodge an application said no. I want to talk to somebody.
We need people.
Absolutely. Then 10% of those people, 9.1% of those people actually filled in an application but did not lodge it because they didn't have the confidence. And less than 1%, which is Gen Y, I guess, lodged their applications digitally. You see, I come from a world where basically the home loan, a financial services product that is very near and dear to the heart of a consumer, they want to know that they're doing the right thing. They want somebody to go, yes, number one. Number two, you said it earlier, they don't trust the banks. Let's just, okay, look, I'm a banker. I can say that without offending anybody. They want somebody independent to say, this is what is the right product for you. This is whom you should be borrowing from or raising your money from. This is who you should be partnering with. And that word partnering and that word trust, the two things that, I'm finding a little bit frustrating at the moment, because I retired from Macquarie, 5 years ago. The world's gone digital, which there's a place for digital, trust me. But the facts and the stats I just gave you says that where digital can make it more efficient and more, more effective to get a loan, you still need that human touch.
It can't replace people, because it's conversations. It's moments like this where we have a conversation and I hear you, I see you, and I get to ask you questions. That's what brokers have the amazing opportunity to do each and every day. Albeit now we do it digitally over Zoom, and we're not having to drive around to people's homes late at night and do things like that. But we really are critical in Australians being able to understand what their dreams are, what they look like, and how to get there when it comes to buying property and borrowing money.
Sarah, it's that, but I think it's a little bit more than that. Okay, I think it's a bit more than that, because it's not just, you see, people have got to understand that the lens you look at something through, right? Now, I'm looking at you at the moment, I'm seeing something different to what you're seeing over my right shoulder. And this is what mistake that I think a lot of people, including I used to make once upon a time, so I'm only speaking from experience and knowledge. And what is that? That is mistakes that you've made before.
It's wisdom.
It's all about wisdom, right? So what I say to people is that when you talk to 5 different people, you can't talk to those 5 different people in the same way. And I say to people, be a chameleon. People say to me, what the hell is a chameleon? Well, a chameleon is an animal, as you would know, that sits in the forests and in the tropical forests, and it changes colour to blend in with the thing. So understand what your customer wants. Now, your customer, people say to me, your customer is the end client, is the end consumer. Not necessarily. Okay. As a banker, my first line of customer was my distribution network. And you asked me earlier why. We made a conscious decision 35 years ago that we did not want to establish a branch network which was a fixed cost base, right? We consciously established the strategy of outsourcing or setting up. You want to call it a mortgage banker, you want to call it a broker. I'd like to call them intermediaries, because I think brokers, undermines what this industry does.
We don't break things, we build relationships.
Sorry?
We don't break things, we build relationships, is what I've always said.
Exactly. So we consciously made that strategy. So for me, my customer was always my distribution network. And then we had to then pay attention to what the customer was that you were selling to. So therefore, I think I've shared this with you before. I might have created the Mont Blanc Pent once upon a time if I was that lucky. But if I can't sell one of those units, I failed. So you've got to put yourself into the position, or in what the broker thinks, or what the funder might think, or what the ultimate customer thinks, because that is what it's all about. People think that they're a credit analyst or they're a sales guy. No, they're not. We're all in customer service. Doesn't matter what role you play in the chain. We're all in customer service.
So Frank, let me ask you this. What does the broker of 2024 look like today that's set up for success? What do they need to do? How do they need to work? And what do they need to change in their mindset from, say, the broker of 2014?
Talk to people, don't talk at people. That would be the first advice I would give anybody.
Be curious, not judgmental.
Sorry?
Be curious and not judgmental.
You can be all of that. Use the 2 greatest gifts God's given you, the ears. You might think you're smarter than the next person, and you probably are, right? But you know what? Talking at people doesn't find anything out. Getting information is free. Listen to what your client wants. Work 50% hard. And what do I mean by that? No should not be your first response to anything. That's 2 letters. How is how. Okay, it's 1 more letter. It's 50% more. So I say to people, everything in life is doable. Just sit down, listen to what is required, and apply your experience, your knowledge, and your common sense to get somebody to where you want to get them to. It is just so fundamentally important. We've overcomplicated. It was a very, very simple industry. I was reading all the papers coming down from Sydney this morning, and somebody's talking about customer data, and somebody's talking about the guys from the old TikTok, whatever they call themselves these days, are talking about scraping information.
We talk about data. We talk about facts rather than talking about people.
Talk about people. At the end of the day, we can talk about as much data as we want, but you've got a human being, you've got a customer at the end of this. And when they're spending, and particularly around Australia where housing prices are these days, the kind of money people are borrowing, the levels of debt that people are taking on to buy their home, don't underestimate the significance and importance that is to them, and why they need to talk to an expert, which is what this industry is. It's all about experts. Again, I'm biased because I
like your bias, Frank.
I sponsor this industry. I'm a biased human being, but this industry needs that. And look, and the data that I will grab onto is they talk 70%, I think, go through brokers these days. Let's even call it 65. So in every 3 loans that are written in the market at the moment, two of them go through an intermediary. And as hard as the banks have tried to break this industry down for many, many, many years, all failed.
So Frank, you touch on a really interesting piece of data, and I think back to a conversation I had at a dinner many, many years ago with James Simon about broking. And I said, look, once we crack 50%, and now we're at 70, the biggest threat that we're going to have to our industry is not becoming irrelevant, but it's not having new talent. So if you could get out your magic wand, which I know you love to do, and you could fix, change, or improve the one thing that would help new talent come in and stay, what would it be and why?
I think that it would be really important if the people such as the Mark Morrises, the John Simons, Frank Ganises, the people that have done this for many, many years, could explain to the new breed today, this is how the industry started. This is what actually made it successful. And that's not to say that what we did 35 years ago is going to work today, but you can't throw it all out.
You can't get rid of history, and you can't recreate a narrative to support something you're doing today. You've got to understand why we came about.
Exactly. Why I say to people, I don't use a calculator. I get frustrated when people just go, 1 and 1 equals 2. Your head's got to know that. So you've got to know what it is you are today. Why is that important? Because then you understand the value that you are adding on to your customer.
So if I think back to when I first started, it was all about conversations. We put a lot of tools now, we put a lot of tech, we put a lot of process, we put a lot of stuff between the broker and the human on the end of the relationship. So is it something that maybe what we need to do is we really need to get back to basics in our industry about listening and understanding what people need and want so we can help them better?
I think you've articulated very, very well. As I said earlier, we've overcomplicated what is something that is very, very, very simple. This is all about people. This is about understanding your client, but also your client understanding you too, because there are things that the client may want that might prove difficult to do. So therefore, by sitting down together and having a good chat, consulting and understanding each other's what we're trying to do here, you always come up with a better outcome. Always come up with a better outcome.
So we look for solutions. If it's not now, it could be in 6 months, it could be in 12 months, or there might be something that the client needs to do or the broker needs to change, whether it be, and this is where I think the topic that I want to ask you about as well, broker burnout. Our industry's been through a lot, and brokers have worn working hard and working long hours as a badge of honour. Do you think it's sustainable, and what do we need to do to help brokers stay, good brokers stay?
Look, I can't talk about broker burnout because I'm not close enough to it, to be very honest with you. What I would say is that I think that if everybody, all the participants, what do I mean by that? I mean by the lenders, I mean by the aggregators, I mean by the franchisees, whoever you want to talk about here, if we all got together and honest to God, sometimes stop fighting each other, this understanding this is a big industry, it's big enough for everybody. I mean, again, I read the other night, we've gone through $2.2 trillion worth of loans. It is only second to superannuation in this country. That's how important this mortgage industry is in Australia. It's only second to super. And super's compulsory, mortgages are not, right? Okay, so everybody wants a home loan. I used to say to a lot of people in America when I was lucky enough to work over there, I said, in America, you guys just go and hand your keys. In Australia, that doesn't work like that. I mean, the last thing it goes, I mean, in all sincerity, the pet will go first, my wife might even go, but the house never goes.
That's true. The house.
I'm not being cheeky, but I mean that's how we seriously and how our commitment to when we borrow something here, we actually pay off what we promised we would do. Plus, also having a roof over our houses is very, very important. So you asked me earlier, so what needs to be done here? I think that we've all got to understand where, unfortunately, economics and where the property markets and interest rates are going drives what's happening with a lot of these guys. And I have a view, this is just a frank view, it's only my own personal view. I think, as I touched on earlier, we've overcomplicated what something that's very, very, very simple. I find it offensive, and I've said this for like 35 years, that you, as a consumer, if you're a borrower in this organisation, you happen to be a data point on a process loan. You're not, you're a human being.
We're people.
Okay? You're people, you have a name, and we should know you by that name, right? I get frustrated when speaking with colleagues in the industry saying to me, what are you doing visiting such and such a place? Haven't you got people that do that for you? How can I inspire and motivate my people if I don't understand what you've just touched on, the heartache, the challenges, and and sometimes burnout and the difficulties these people have got? How do I help? How do I identify where you are? I put myself in your position, look through your lenses, if I don't know exactly what you guys are going through. And that's just important to me. Now, not everybody shares my views, but as John Simon said to me once upon a time, we do things in life and you look at the scoreboard never lies. So what do I mean by that? If you've been successful in what you've done, then it works. Right? It does work, okay? And I personally think we've just gone far too, it's all about data, it's all about the digital. You know what? Data and digital are very, very important in what we do, right? But you always got to remember, there is a human being at the end of this line. If we don't talk to these people, we don't understand what they want, how do I build a data? How do I build a processing line if it's not meeting customer A's expectations, which being the distributor, and then customer B's expectations being the customer themselves?
So if I was to distill that down for every single broker out there listening is the question they need to ask themselves is, why am I here? How can I listen better? And what can I do to understand my clients and help them?
So can I go a bit further and say, what value am I adding and what changes am I influencing? Because if you just want to go there and just be, as I would call it, just an order taker, look, lots of people can do that.
That's
Anybody
McDonald's.
can do that. Okay? That's why I used the word how earlier. Understand your client. How can I impact these people's lives? Look, you asked me earlier, one of the things that I'm very, very proud of is, as an industry over the last 30 odd years, we've touched on millions of lives, changed people's ability to acquire homes, change the pressure or the functions of what interest rates look like, and certainly change what product specs and what product features and product offerings are available. I mean, I remember when we first started, one of the things that drove me nuts, now we probably went too far the other way, was there was like 20 different loans with 20 different interest rates. Like there's a different rate for a pool, there's a different rate for a car.
Too confusing.
And we thought we were really, really smart. One rate for everybody. Well, that in hindsight, not a smart move because there are different risks that you've got to do. So I think pricing for risk is something, but you can't have 20,000 different iterations of it. You've got to understand that this is what it all looks like. And look, and the regulators have been a little bit tougher with lenders over recent times with the capital put against them, which makes it very, very tough. But what we've all got to understand is that, and I say this to people, everywhere. I remember saying this to, it was a strong strategy, conscious strategy at Macquarie when we were going through the GFC. The most relevant and the most significant businesses in this country is the lending and deposit businesses. And we've been lucky enough to be part of that for a long, long time, okay? So be flattered that we're part of it, okay? Don't take it for granted, right? But also as a final word, because we're getting the wind up here, this industry should understand that brokers are not participants, okay? Intermediaries are not participants. Intermediaries influence and drive where this market's going.
Can we just go back to that for one last moment?
Drive where this industry's going to.
Brokers, and I say this to every broker that I talk to, we are the innovators and we have way more influence than we give ourselves credit for when it comes to shaping the market. And what I've heard today and why I'm so excited to have you back in the fold is, not only does it feel like the industry is on a precipice, but it sounds as though that we are a hop, skip and a jump away from truly becoming a profession.
Oh, that's the word. So there's no use intermediary and not use the word broker. This is a profession, right? This is absolutely a profession.
Thank you, because I think every broker out there
absolutely professional.
We are a profession.
But
we have to believe it.
Grab it and drive it. Because if you don't do it, if this industry doesn't do it, trust me, there are people that would like to undo it, right?
Definitely.
Okay? So own it, drive it. As I said, I think there's a lot of upside in this industry. I don't think it's reached its full potential yet. Again, I am biased, I acknowledge that totally, right? But I was retired. I failed in retirement. Why have I decided
Why
this again?
Come back?
Look at me, the fire's burning in my belly. I mean, there's a lot more still to be done here, and I want to be part of this.
Frank, thank you for joining me and being here today.
Pleasure.